Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central here in Kent, Ohio. Tonight we continue on with our story of Blake, or the Huts of America. Almost called him Black. It does look kind of like black, almost like we spell Black Facts, except with that extra E behind it. So we're going to continue on reading from that book. But before we get started, let's do a couple little things here, the housekeeping chores. Number one, if you're watching this on Facebook, give us a like. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And then go ahead, spread the word across the land far and wide. For everybody to come out, ollie, ollie, oxen's free. It's time to stop standing over there in the corner trying to hide. Let's take a ride on the wild side. Meanwhile, before we go all the way over to the wild side, let's just take a ride on the Marcus Garvey Express and see what kind of inspirational words he's got for us today. We know he's got something good for us here. Let's see what he's got. The history of a movement, the history of a nation, the history of a race is the guidepost of that movement's destiny, that nation's destiny, that race's destiny. The history of a movement, the history of a nation, the history of a race is the guidepost of that movement's destiny, that nation's destiny, that race's destiny. And so shall it be. The history of a movement. So we're going to go back. We're winding back the clock all the way back to antebellum times, to the days of slavery, the days of yore, the days of old. Some folks say the good old days. But were they? Well, let's see what Delaney had to say about them good old days in his novel, Blake, or The Huts of America. And the chapter is chapter 5. Title of this chapter is called A Vacancy. Let's see exactly what does he mean by that, a vacancy. Boom. And there we go with our daily slideshow. Ooh, and I'm loving it. I'm not talking about Mickey D's, but I am loving it. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, Lord, yes. A vacancy. This morning, the sun rose with that beauty known to a southern sky in the last month of autumn. The day was the Sabbath day, and with it was ushered in every reminiscence common to the customs of that day and locality, that she might spend the day at church for the diversion of her mind. Mrs. Franks was brought in to her city residence, and Natchez, which is usually gay, seemed more so on this day than on former occasions. I see somebody says they cannot hear me, but I'm not sure why that would be. Can't say why that would be. If you cannot hear me, then switch from Facebook to YouTube. Go to our Tubular Black Facts channel on YouTube if you cannot hear me. And that will be a way to solve that problem. Plus, then you can also see the pictures as well. Yeah, and I'm sure you can hear me there because I can see my microphone is working. All right, so now where were we at? When the bells began to signal the hour of worship, the fashionable people seemed en masse to crowd the streets. The carriages ran in every direction, bearing happy hearts and cheerful faces to the various places of worship, there to lay their offerings on the altar of the Most High for the blessings they enjoyed, whilst peering over every gate, out of every alley, or every kitchen door could be seen the faithful black servants who, staying at home to prepare them food and attend to other domestic duties, were satisfied to look smilingly upon their masters and families as they rode along, without for a moment dreaming that they had a right to worship the same God with the same promise of life and salvation. God bless you, missus. Pray for me, was honest request of many a simple-hearted slave who dared not aspire to the enjoyment of praying for himself in the temple of God, of the living God, in the temple of the living God, not just God, but the living God. But amidst these amidst these scenes of gaiety and pleasure, there was one much devoted to her church, who could not be happy that day, as there to her was a seeming vacancy which could not be filled, the seat of her favorite maid servant. The colonel, as a husband and father, was affectionate and indulgent, but his slave had offended, disobeyed his commands, and consequently had to be properly punished, or he be disrespected by his own servants. The will of the master being absolute, his commands should be enforced. Let them be what they may, and the consequences what they would. If slavery be right, the master is justifiable in enforcing obedience to his will. Deny him this, and you at once deprive him of the right to hold a slave. The one is a necessary sequence of the other. Upon this principle, Colonel Franks acted, and the premise justified the conclusion. When the carriage drove to the door, Mrs. Franks wept out most bitterly, refusing to enter because her favorite maid could not be incumbent. Fears being entertained of seriousness in her case, it was thought advisable to let her remain quietly at home. Daddy Joe and Mammy Judy were anxious spectators of all that transpired at the door of the mansion, and that night, on retiring to their humble bed, earnestly petitioned at the altar of grace that the Lord would continue upon her his afflictions until their master, convinced of his wrongs, would order the return of their child. This the colonel would have most willingly done without the petition of Joe or Judy, but the case had gone too far. The offense was too great, and consequently there could be no reconsideration. Poor things, muttered Mrs. Franks in a delirium. She served him right, and this her only offense. Yes, she was true to me. Little Joe, the son of Maggie, in consequence of her position to the white children, from whom her separation had been concealed, had been constantly with his grandmother and called her Mammy. Accustomed to being without her, he was well satisfied so long as permitted to be with the old woman, Judy. So soon as her condition would permit, Mrs. Franks was returned to her country seat to avoid the contingencies of the city. Chapter 6. Henry's Return. Early on Monday morning, a steamer was heard puffing up the Mississippi. Many who reside near the river by custom can tell the name of every approaching boat by the peculiar sound of the steam pipe, that steam pipe whistle, the one in the present instance being the Sultana. Daddy Joe had risen and just leaving for the plantation, but stopped a moment to be certain. Hush, admonished Mammy Judy. Hush, show child. Don't you hear how she holler? Surely that's surely that's the what's name. What that you call it? Sakana. What not? Show, I ain't gonna bother my head long, so show. See, old man, see? There she come. See that now? I told you so. But you wouldn't believe me. And the old man and woman stood for some minutes in breathless silence, although the boat must have been some 5 miles distance. As the escape of steam can be heard on the western waters a great way off. The approach toward sunrise admonished Daddy Joe of demands for him at the cotton farm, when, after bidding good morning, old woman, he hurried to the daily task which lay before him. Mammy Judy had learned by the boy Tony that Henry was expected on the Sultana, and at the approach of every steamer, her head had been thrust out of the door or window to catch a distinct sound. In motionless attitude after the departure of her husband this morning, the old woman stood awaiting the steamer, when presently the boat arrived. But then, to be certain that it was the expected vessel, now came the suspense. The old woman was soon relieved from this most disagreeable of all emotions by the cry of newsboys returning from the wharf. Here's the Picayune, Atlas, Delta, latest news from New Orleans by the swift steamer Sultana. There now, exclaimed Mammy Judy in soliloquy. There now, I told you so. There what's name come. There what's name come. Hurrying into the kitchen, she waited with anxiety the arrival of Henry. Busying about the breakfast for herself and other servants about the house, the white members of the family all being absent, Mammy Judy for a time lost sight of the expected arrival. Soon, however, a hasty footstep arrested her attention, when on looking around it, proved to be Henry, who came smiling up the yard. How do you do, Mammy? How's Mag and the boy? Inquired he, grasping the old woman by the hand. She burst into a flood of tears, throwing herself upon him. What is the matter? Exclaimed Henry. Is Maggie dead? No, child. With increased sobs she replied, much better she were. My God, has she disgraced herself? No, child. May be better she done so. Then she been here now and not sold. Ma Stephen sell her 'cause she, I don't know, reckon that's the reason. What? Do you tell me, Mammy, she had better disgraced herself than be sold by the... So, Henry, you ain't going to swear? Hope you ain't going to lose your religion. Don't do so. Put your trust in the Lord. He is sufficient for all. Don't tell me about religion. What's religion to me? My wife is sold away from me by a man who is one of the leading members of the very church to which both she and I belong. Put my trust in the Lord. I done so all my life nearly, and of what use is it to me? My wife is sold for me just the same as if I didn't. Come, Henry. You mustn't talk so. We is poor, weak, and blind critters, and what? And can't see the way of the Lord. He move in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. So he may And what is all that to me? I don't gain anything by it. And stop, Henry, stop. And the Lord bless your soul, and he take your foot out the mire and clay and give you hope. Give you hope. The other side, this veil of tears. I'm tired looking the other side. I want to hope for this side of the veil of tears. I want something on this earth as well as a promise of things in another world. I and my wife have been both robbed of our liberty, and you want me to be satisfied with a hope of heaven? I won't do any such thing. I waited long enough on heavenly promises. I'll wait no longer. Henry, what the matter with you? I never hear you talk so. For your sin in the sight of God, you're gone clean back, I reckon. The good book tell us 1,000 ways with man, 1,000 years with man, and but a day with the Lord. Boy, you got wait the Lord on pointed time. Well, Mammy, it is useless for me to stand here and have the same gospel preached into my ears by you that I have all my lifetime heard from my enslavers. My mind is made up, my course is laid out, and if life lasts, I'll carry it out. I'll go out to the place today and let them know that I have returned. Show, boy, what you gonna do? Burn house down? Better you trust in the Lord, concluded the old woman. You have too much religion, Mammy, for me to tell you what I intend doing, said Henry in conclusion, after taking up his little son and pressing on his lips and cheeks kisses for himself and tears for his mama. The intelligent slave left the abode of the careworn old woman for that of his master at the cotton place. Henry was a black, a pure Negro, handsome, manly, and intelligent in size, comparing well with his master, but neither so fleshy nor heavy built in person. A man of good literary attainments, unknown to Colonel Franks, though he was aware he could read and write, having been educated in the West Indies and decoyed away when young. His affection for wife and child was not excelled by Colonel Franks for his. He was bold, determined, and courageous, but always mild, gentle, and courteous, though impulsive when an occasion demanded his opposition, going immediately to the place. He presented himself before his master. Much conversation ensued concerning the business which had been entrusted to his charge, all of which was satisfactorily transacted, and full explanations concerning the horses, but not a word was uttered concerning the fate of Maggie, the colonel barely remarking, your mistress is unwell. After conversing till a late hour, Henry was assigned a bed in the great house, but sleep was far from his eyes. He turned and changed upon his bed with restlessness and anxiety, impatiently awaiting a return of the morning. And so ends chapter 6. As you can see, the plot thickens here, as we now run into some slaves that the writing here is so difficult for me to read that I can barely get the words out of my mouth to where they sound like somebody actually talking, and then somebody else who's so literate that you can't tell at all that they're even black. So he's presenting us here with a couple of extremes, and it remains to be seen what road he's actually taken us up. But it seems to be quite interesting as they're having this discussion on religion. And if Henry has lost his religion, or if he's going to hold on to his religion, waiting on the promised day from the Lord, we shall see. Meanwhile, all you little children out there, you know what time it is. Don't make me have to give you a quiz. I need you all to take your little head, put it on your little pillow, on your little bed, close those your eyes, and wait on that sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, you'll know that it's time for you to rise and shine. Oh, chillin' of mine. But in the meantime, close those eyes and get some rest. So when you wake up in the morning, you will feel the best that you ever had in the first minute of a new day. Because tomorrow is going to be a new day, and you want to be able to greet it the right way. Same thing for you adults, with the additional admonishment to go ahead, give us a like if you're watching on Facebook. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Keep those messages coming. We appreciate them, especially when you give us commentary about what's going on. And then last but not least, go ahead and, what's the word for it? Subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. Make sure that you get a subscription so that when we come on YouTube in the future, you'll be notified and you'll be able to not only hear, but you'll be able to see all the imagery that we're putting together to go along with these words from Dr. Martin R. Delaney, who wrote this book, Blake, way back in the 1850s or so. So, meanwhile, peace out without a doubt. We're going to just say goodnight to Rolanda, and we're going to say goodnight to Brother Solomon. Shalom, shalom. Peace out without a doubt. Of course, with justice, because anything less disgusts us. And you know we don't like being disgusted, but we don't mind if you discuss us. Peace out.